but since it didn't sit flat to the screen, it was all black with some pink showing, you know.
Audio. Yep, here we go. All right, we got excellent connection. We are streaming.
We are streaming.
Yeah.
But I won't say what I was about to say.
Yep. All right.
Well, Moss, did that help?
Did what you did help?
Yeah.
It helped immensely, except it still goes too far in the back, and I'm still gagging back there.
Oh, you want me to trim there? Okay, I see
Yeah,
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I still have to put your other package together since I messed up on the first one.
Well, at least I already have my teeth in, at least the uppers.
Is it still
lowers
lost?
don't help me talk. What? No. If you're saying, did Joe still lose my teeth? No, he sent them back, and I need to send them back for further modifications.
Oh, I see, said the blind man as he weed in the wind. It all
And
comes
I
back
forgot
to me now.
I forgot to send him his power supply and a second set of headphones. And maybe some ear cups.
Bill, I always heard it said the blind man to his deaf horse.
Says the blind man to his deaf horse. Yeah, there you go.
Of course, there's the old poem, too, you know. One bright day in the middle of the night, two dead boys got up to fight. Back to back, they faced each other, drew their swords, and shot each other. A deaf policeman heard the noise and shot and killed the two dead boys. If you think my tale is tall, ask the blind man, he saw it all.
Love it.
That's really old. They can't even find where it first appeared.
That's all the good stuff. All the good stuff
you can't even find where it first appeared.
Like all of Homer's so-called poems. I think it's interesting that they all rhyme in English. Has nobody
That's probably the translator did that.
But come on. That's a bit much.
Have you read any of Stanislav Lem's books?
Yeah. I haven't
Have you read the Siberiad?
Very little.
Whoever translated the Siberiad should have been paid more than Lem. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, all these words are being invented as they go along, and he still made it brilliant.
For anybody that's listening now, we're just kind of hanging out to see if anybody else shows up.
Yeah, we're hoping Norbert will be here soon.
Yep, the three of us can definitely make a show, but it's helpful to have a four. And yes, I'm actually on the show this time, as crazy as that is.
How's the campaign going, Joe?
Oh, dude. So much running around. I'm actually going to be on TV tomorrow.
I know how the fundraising's going. I can see that. Yeah.
Well, that particular site is not the only donation site that we have.
That's good, because you only have 23 donors on there.
Yeah, and that one is at, what, $1,900?
Yep.
Which isn't terrible. I think between that and the other site, we're only at like 3,000 or something. But it's a local election, man. Would I like to have, a bigger expense budget to do things? Yes. Am I going to complain that people aren't giving me more free money? No.
By the way, I am a little fuzzy today because I am going to start growing it back. I've got a concert in mid-May, and it should be a beard by that time.
Your camera is just blurry enough, just barely blurry enough to block that out, to where I can't really see it.
My camera is blurry?
No, I mean, not like, okay, I shouldn't have said that. The picture is just imperfect enough to... No, that ain't good either.
There, is mine better?
That looks great, Joe.
Awesome.
Did that make it better or worse?
Oh, that
better.
That made it a lot better. What'd you do?
Clearer.
Focus.
changed the focus, just like I'm doing.
I can't do that on mine.
Well, I would show you, but you know,
There's no adjustment on this thing at all.
Means yours is digital and ours is manual because you paid money for yours and we got ours cheap.
Mine was in the $23 range, but I also saw the same exact camera for sale on Amazon for $78, and now I can't find it for sale anywhere.
I can actually change to my old camera here. I think it's still working. Yep, there it is.
Well, your focus is okay anyhow. That's a little bit bluer, but it's a little brighter too.
It's got
Yeah, your backup camera is probably better than my primary camera, so...
the backup
Although
camera is three times the price of the primary camera.
Although it puts the loop of your pop filter right across your face.
Now,
I mean, I could put in the extra work to get Droid Cam set up for proper HD and then just use my phone. But then I have to redo a bunch of that work, you know, every time I restart my computer because of the mod probe.
yeah.
I
Steve's
could
been
probably
using his
automate the crap out of that, but
Well,
phone.
I'd like to keep this shaved a little longer, but I have to keep my image going, and when I get to the convention and do my concert, I have to have a beard.
I think I'm going to have to trim the beard later today. And there's
What,
always
not
the
Republican
chance when you trim the beard that you mess it up and you end up shaving off the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you did okay last time.
Yeah. It's just I don't know. That's pretty good for, you know, like 2 months
Yeah.
from basically at the line to there. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I've
my
been
beard
trying.
grows pretty fast. About 2 weeks, it looks like I'm growing a beard, and about 3 to 4 weeks, it looks like I have a beard.
I've been trying to watch Moon Knight. So I finished the first episode today and was able to start the second episode.
Yeah, I've already seen reviews of the third episode, and I can't find it anywhere.
Did you check my Plex?
Yes, you only
Because
have
it's on my
episodes
Plex.
Your third episode is? It
The
wasn't
third
last
episode.
night.
The third episode is on my Plex.
All right. Well, we'll go look. But what was weird is on Cody, when we had Cody working, the first episode never showed up. We watched the second episode and then watched the rundown of what happened the first episode. And then we got on your Plex later and said, oh, gee, Joe has the first episode. Let's go watch it.
I don't use Plex. Do you have to have have you got to have something exposed to the internet, or is that something that works through a third party?
It depends on what you want. You can use it locally, or you can use it through, or you can expose it to the internet and use it through Plex.tv and be able to use it from anywhere.
Because my Jellyfin, I could get an SSL certificate for it and expose it to the internet, but it works just as good just wire guarding back into the house and then playing it that way, so I don't mess with it.
Honestly, yeah, if it wasn't for a couple of the people that I allow to use my Plex, I could do the exact same thing and just, VPN back into my house.
You have noticed I haven't told anybody whose Plex server I'm using. I will keep it that way.
Probably a good idea.
No, because,
Pirates
I share
Unite.
with a couple of the people with that I do the Linux Lugcast with, because we all watch the same movies, specifically for the show. And so one of us gets the movie and all three of us can watch it.
Well, we tried
Or
to
four
watch
of us
Ex
that watch
Machina,
movies.
but it wasn't in English.
Well, there's settings.
Ah.
Either that or you have to switch versions.
Okay.
I'm not sure about
Bill,
that movie.
Sometime I have to ask you about RTV.
About what?
RTV.
RTV? Oh,
R. Yeah. Sometime that we're not streaming over the internet.
yeah. I'll have to go learn what that is first.
R.
or like
Do I need to cover an eye?
okay, so you were
get a peg
speaking
leg?
you were speaking
Arr.
generally while cryptically at the same time.
R.
Oh,
Dude,
Aye, Captain.
I did a whole show on it while you were off on how to set up the virtual machine that only allows traffic through VPN, and then all the automation to make things start automatically, download automatically, go to a specific location for my Plex automatically.
Shame on me for not listening then. What episode?
I don't know. It was while you were out. I think it was a little bit before. It might have been around Halloween. I'd have to look.
Do you know how to BitTorrent?
Yes.
Do you know how to download ISOs from BitTorrent?
Yes, I did today. Well, no, I did yesterday. Because I didn't get much testing in with LMDE5 because I have no time. But I at least wanted to be able to install a couple of applications, and try it out for a couple of hours before I jumped on the show.
It's meant without the little kernel tool built into the update manager.
That was the one thing I really noticed was the kernel tool wasn't there.
And you don't have the hardware, the driver manager either, which I thought that was peculiar.
I didn't check for the driver manager.
Yeah, it doesn't have that, which, I mean, there's other tools out there you can get that are just front ends for FWD, so I was kind of surprised that wasn't there.
I'm sure you can install it.
Yeah.
You just got to know what it's called. And
Well,
It used to be called Jockey or something like that. It was an old project they used to use.
on a similar note, as I have put in the show notes and we'll cover later, Leo did a nice little batch of screenshots of using the new Mint installer beta to upgrade from LMDE4 to LMDE5 and showing how nicely it works.
Well, there's one thing about that installer that I thought would probably confuse people. And I don't know if it was the same for everybody, but you had to, when you got to the part where you were going to choose where to install it, you actually had to click on that bar. It didn't bring up any disks. You had to click on that bar and then...
Yeah, I even had it on a system that only had one disk.
Yeah, that's what I did, and it still did that. So that was maybe a bug or maybe...
My problem with LMDE is after it's installed. Because that bloody thing, about one time out of 3, one time out of 5, it varies, will boot to init RAM FS thinking I have a RAID 6 array.
Why? Because you have so many installations on the machine, and it gets...
I don't have so many. I mean, it's one of 5 spread across 2 disks. Spread across, there's only 3 on that disk.
But are they all sharing the same boot or EFI system partition?
That doesn't make it RAID 6.
I know. Well, none of that makes it RAID 6. I'm just trying to figure out.
And all my other boots work, including regular Mint.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the reason.
I reinstalled it twice to see if what I did wrong, and there was nothing that I could have changed on the installation.
I hear your tears, Moss.
Yeah.
I hear your tears.
No, you don't, because I'm not shedding any right this moment. I'm just pitching.
Well, at what point do we just say, you know what?
Let's go.
Let's give him another 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
And then we just stop talking. It's like we're just going to sit here in silence for 5 minutes.
Crowd participation, folks. Give us something to talk about.
We could do a 5-minute noise check. Just
sit here in silence.
Yeah.
Oh, that I don't know. I don't know if I could pull it off. Yeah, he hasn't answered my Discord howl.
Oh. Bill, we need you.
Norbert,
Bill's here.
Joe?
What?
It's not Bill we need, it's Norbert.
Oh. I think he figured it out.
Whoops. Well, not Norbert, we need Josh. We need Josh to get off the bench.
Which Josh?
Take your pick.
Yeah. What's
I
people?
thought I saw one of them on just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, well, Josh on Tech responded to something I said this morning at about 11 o'clock when I was talking about how I tried to update LMDE to SID, and it went
Well,
Yeah, Josh
inside
is
out on me.
online.
if we get started, we'll have to remember that if Norbert comes on, we have to stop at that point and pick up after we get him zeroed in and synced. So
You see the enthusiasm in my face?
yeah, we could go ahead and get going.
Let me do a little bit more setup here. Okay, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I got Audacity up.
Well, should we do our silence?
Yep.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, record. All righty, Roo. And let me check my mic level. No, it's okay. All right. Zero time. 3, 2, 1, 0.
Zero.
Minimize that sucker.
There we go. Turn my mic off.
Call this show Three Old White Dudes.
That's how most Linux podcasts are, though.
Three old neckbeards.
It was nice that we had Leo on the show for a long time. It would have been nice. It's nice that we have Nishant come on sometimes. That changes things a bit.
I just wish people...
There are a few shows that actually have a woman on the show. That would be interesting.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, muting my mic. Whoever wants to start can start.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'll do it. Okay. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. I'm Bill.
Running for position 4, I'm Joe.
I'm just Moss.
Norbert couldn't be here today, or at least he hasn't showed up yet. This is episode 385. This is episode 385.5, recorded on Sunday the 17th of April, 2022. Live stream information is at mintcast.org/live stream. If you see something you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us an email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post on the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram, Discord, Facebook, or post directly at mintcast.org. First up in the news, Mint 21 will have a new graphical upgrade tool. Fedora plans to remove BIOS and Xorg. GNOME 43 reworks Adwaita tools. Ubuntu adds accents. A Sony engineer makes exFAT 73% faster. And Alibaba previews a 128-core ARM v9 server processor. In security and privacy, well, we have none, because it's a secure world. In our wanderings, Joe is bored of school runnings. Oh, bored as in you're bored of it, or Joe is bored of school runnings. I think it means he's running for school board. Norbert is looking for a mate. Moss blew up Cody, and Bill is browser casting. In our innards section, we discuss Linux Mint Debian Edition 5 LC, and finally the feedback and a couple of suggestions.
So now that Norbert's here, let's get another 0 in. Are you ready to go, Norbert?
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you now. You got your Audacity up and running?
Oh, that I forgot.
It helps.
Yep, it does. Okay. Today was a mess. I sort of forgot about the show, but
Tell
had
it to the judge.
Yes, but I have the notification anytime the stream starts with the channel, so that's how I... Okay. Do we just do a 0, or do we just...
Yeah,
I already started recording.
Well,
Yeah, that's fine.
We just
Okay.
do a 0. So,
We'll have to do a group 0 again.
Yeah.
Group 0. 3, 2, 1,
0.
0.
Okay.
Lovely.
Take it away, Bill.
All right, so first up in the news, Linux Mint 21, Vanessa, will have a new graphical tool to upgrade from Mint 20.3, and this is from 9 to 5 Linux. Clement Lefebvre, somebody tell me how to say that. Lefebvre revealed the fact that the team is also working on a new upgrade utility to make things significantly easier for newcomers who want to upgrade their current Linux Mint installations to a major release, such as Linux Mint 21. Upgrades towards a point release within the same major version of Linux Mint are quite simple and easy to perform. Upgrades towards a next major release, however, are much more complex. They require an advanced level of knowledge and experience, and they are performed using the command line, said Lefebvre.
Just call him Clem.
Clem.
Just
Said
call
Clem.
him
Clem.
I'm sorry, Clem. We are working on an upgrade tool which will make this significantly easier in the future. The new Linux Mint upgrade tool promises features like a fully graphical interface, localization in various languages, the ability to perform more checks to ensure the upgrade process will go smoothly, fully configurable, and the ability to preserve the user's choice of mirrors, as well as the ability to provide and handle various upgrade scenarios. In addition, the new upgrade tool won't force users to remove their custom repositories and PPAs and warns them about orphan packages, but lets you keep them. Leo Chavez has shown how the beta works in updating from LMDE4 to LMDE5, and there's 2 links in the show notes. So yeah, presumably upgrading from major versions was more difficult than just sudo do release upgrade, which
I was actually surprised that Mint didn't have this feature before.
Yeah,
Ubuntu's had it for a while, but it doesn't always work the best.
it's historically it's been, most people that are serious about it will always just nuke and pave, that take that opportunity to do a nice clean installation.
Yeah, that's what I did, but for my desktop now I plan to try upgrading from Fedora 35 to 36 because I've heard good things about Fedora's upgrade system.
Yeah, that's pretty new too.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Fedora, nice segue, by the way.
Yep.
Fedora plans to deprecate legacy BIOS support and remove legacy Exod drivers. Oh, this is you,
Can I take
Norbert.
that?
I'm sorry.
Yep. All right, take 2.
Take 2.
Fedora plans to deprecate legacy BIOS support and remove legacy Exod drivers. It's a hard word. This is from Phoronix. A change proposal was published today for deprecating legacy BIOS support with Fedora 37. This application will not remove the legacy BIOS support for Fedora 37, but will not support non-UEFI installations for new Fedora x64 installs. Eventually, though, the plan is to work towards removing the legacy BIOS support entirely. Those running Fedora on a legacy BIOS system right now will continue to be able to upgrade to F37 packages without a fresh install just fine. Why Fedora having phased out 32-bit x86 OS installations already and placing system requirements around that of at least... Wait, what? With Fedora having phased out 32-bit x86 OS installations already and placing system requirements around that of at least 2006 era hardware. This change shouldn't impact too many users besides those that just have UEFI support disabled on their otherwise supported hardware. Adding to the interesting changes being worked on for Fedora 37 Adding to the interesting changes being worked on for Fedora 37 due out later this year is the removal of legacy Exod drivers. Fedora is looking at removing these legacy graphic driver paths that are incompatible with running Wayland. A change proposal laid out this week by Red Hat's Adam Jackson is for removing the VESA and B and FBDev Exod drivers and in turn associated support code from the Exod server that leads to using those drivers. This is part of transitioning further away from X11 and focusing on Wayland support. The BFDev/VESA Exod driver code isn't well maintained and largely used by obsolete graphics cards that lack hardware acceleration anyhow. But this is interesting.
This is what we need Fedora for, though, is to make what would be a crazy decision for anybody else. For Fedora, if anybody's going to lead the way and make the decision and pull the trigger and say, okay, if we're ever going to move over to this new technology, we need to make it the status quo, and it needs to start with a distribution like Fedora. So I don't think it's any surprise.
The second article
begs the question: is it ready?
Hey, Bill. Before we jump into the next article, are you sharing the show notes?
Mm-mm. I could.
The second article was interesting because when I read the title about the Exod drivers, I thought that my first impression was that they are planning to deprecate Xorg altogether, but it's apparently just something that isn't really being used anymore. But the BIOS part, it's interesting because it says that people who are running with legacy boot will be able to upgrade. But if something goes wrong on the computer and they want to reinstall, they have to install Fedora 36 and then upgrade to 37. But if it happens after Fedora 36 has reached end of life, then that wouldn't work. And apparently, I'm not really sure how many people are running systems that do not have UEFI support. But somewhere someone told me that apparently there are some motherboards that don't let you run unsigned kernels. No, that won't let you use UEFI unless secure boot is turned on. Now, this doesn't really impact Fedora because Fedora's kernels are signed. But if this become maybe someone, okay, let's say it's probably not very common, but if someone dual boots Fedora with another distro, I dual boot Fedora with Void, and if I had a motherboard that didn't support UEFI, if secure boot is turned off, then I wouldn't be able to do that in the future. So people had I think it was probably a vocal minority, but people had pretty harsh reactions to this. I'm not sure how many people are impacted though.
Well, I maintain what I said before. If it's how long has Wayland been a thing? How long has UEFI been a thing? How long have any of these things been around? But yet they're slow to be adopted because nobody has pulled the trigger to make it, the normal thing that we're going to support,
Well, we were waiting for NVIDIA to actually get on board with the actual standard.
Well,
and I think they may have to a point now.
As far as I understand it, if you really want good, I can almost understand NVIDIA's problem here is the constant, from their perspective, the moving of the goalpost as the kernel is upgraded all the time. That's just not something they're geared up to keep up with. And if you are using a distribution like a long-term support release of anything and you're staying on a stable kernel, then you've got decent NVIDIA support. But I think the problem comes when people are wanting to keep up to date with their Xorg and their Wayland and all of the versions of the kernel and all that, and they're expecting NVIDIA to keep up with that. And because NVIDIA just refuses to open source their drivers, nobody in the community can do anything about it.
Which is exactly the problem, since NVIDIA has promised to open source their drivers for about 10 years now.
Well, they did recently open source something, but it's only for Tegra chips.
Yeah.
So it's something, I guess, but it doesn't really mean that they are willing to open source everything.
Yeah, they had
So
a data dump last year that helped the Nouveau driver get a little bit more in line with what it needs to have, but still, they've been promising to open source them for at least 8 years, and I think 10.
I think it's difficult for people who are in an open source community to understand how somebody who is not, to understand how they think and how they interpret what they see. And they might not feel as though it would benefit them in any meaningful way to go open source. That's not me saying that I forgive them for all of this. It's trying to understand why a company who, from our perspective, we feel as though we would benefit from them going open source, but at the same time, you have to take a moment to try to understand why they wouldn't go down that route. And I don't think the rest of the world has a marvelous idea of the contribution that open source people would make. In spite of all the evidence out there that points towards that idea. I mean, there's been game developers that have went on the record for saying that the vast majority of their most useful bug reports come from Linux users, and yet at the same time we make up such a small percentage of their actual user base.
wasn't it that those bug reports were Linux specific and solving them wouldn't be viable for them because the people who use the game on Linux are such a small group?
Yeah, that might be
compared-
true, but you just don't. The point is, you just don't see that kind of contribution from the Windows side because you've got this. It's a completely different attitude towards computing.
Okay, that makes sense. But maybe it's also that people have encountered more problems on Linux because the game wasn't properly tuned for running it on Linux.
Yeah, it's possible. But I mean, the language they used was that they've got more meaningful, meaning more useful information out of the bug reports from the Linux users than they did. That was the one thing that they did make clear. And I don't remember what game this was, and I wouldn't.
I think we moved off the news article.
Yeah,
so-
well, I mean, the point, here being that it's for somebody like Fedora. I mean, I can't think of another distribution out there who we expect to be on the forefront of adopting the new technologies and then applying the amount of resources necessary to make them work. So I don't blame Fedora for doing this.
What's interesting to me is that Fedora is the upstream of Red Hat, and Red Hat is a paid product.
Yeah.
In the proper environment. So I find it interesting how Fedora tends to be more risky when adopting new stuff because the downstream project Red Hat is supposed to be stable because people are paying for support for it.
I think there's enough
again,
timeline in between the two that they don't worry about it.
Red Hat
I
has
think it's
making
around-
money so they can pay their people to work on these projects, and so they get them fully formed before anyone else does.
Yeah, and they want to be out in front of this stuff like anybody else. Anyway, moving on, though. Go ahead, Joe.
Plans for GNOME 43 and beyond. This is from Chris Davis's blog. Alexander Mikhailenko spent a long time reworking Adwaita so that it works with recoloring, and Chris Davis wants to take full advantage of that with the next two features: global accent colors and a recoloring API. libadwaita makes it simple to implement a much-wanted personalization feature, customizable accent colors. Global accent colors will be opt-in for app developers. For the back end, Chris wants accent colors to be desktop and platform agnostic, like the new dark style preference. Chris plans to submit a proposal for this to the XDG desktop portal in the near future. In GNOME, it'd probably be best to show only a few QA-tested accents in the UI, but libadwaita would support arbitrary colors so that apps from KDE, GNOME, Elementary OS, and more all use the same colors if they support the preference.
I don't know if I understand this more or less as time goes on.
Pretty much. No, I'm right there with you.
I just noticed last week that Plasma implemented a accent color thing, so you can basically make the Breeze theme look like any theme out there, because you're basically changing the color of the folders and stuff like that.
The first time I started looking into GTK themes, one of my first impressions was that, for example, Adwaita had a blue accent color. And I found it interesting that in order to get a different accent color, I had to go online and look for a fork of Adwaita that implemented the different accent colors. So I assumed there would have been a way for me to just maybe change one or two lines of code where the colors are specified for it to be. But apparently, when I looked at those CSS style sheets, they looked a bit complicated. So I think what libadwaita is doing is, ironically, people were complaining about being making stuff less customizable but more consistent. But lately I've tried the GNOME Circle app I think it's called Metadata Remover, and it had a really nice. It just had the standard libadwaita style bar at the top, but it was purple, and it looked nice. And I mean, if different apps using libadwaita started using different colored bars at the top and everything, I would be down with it. I would be absolutely down with that. I would be willing to give up on a consistent color scheme if it meant that apps could have a proper consistent look but different color scheme. So I really like the idea where they're going with accent colors.
Or distributions could apply different color scheme just to provide their own coherent style.
Also standardizing things under the hood between desktop environments and between distributions is also really important.
Yeah.
I've heard about Fedora developers trying to create a new standard implementation for how app indicators work under the hood. And for example, what the GNOME team did with dark mode preference, the same standard could be used by any desktop environment. So if we had something like this for colors as well across desktop environments, I think there wouldn't be less issue with applications looking mismatched when you install them and they're meant to be run on different desktop environments.
Well, GNOME looks better than it used to. That's about all I can say.
The problem is less. I think too, but there are people who don't like the new Adwaita theme. I'm still getting used to the new Adwaita theme because I like how it's more simple and flat, but also I liked something about the old Adwaita that I'm missing from the new one. So it's a mixed bag for me. I probably get used to it as time goes on.
Right on. All right, Moss, what do you got?
Well, on a similar note, Ubuntu 22.04 adds support for accent colors. This is from its FOSS. Ubuntu 22.04 has added a much-needed addition to the appearance settings, i.e. accent colors. The default theme color of Ubuntu is orange, and it will always be the favorite one for users while reflecting Canonical's brand style. However, with Ubuntu 22.04, you can finally choose the accent color, thanks to all the additional colors available from the Yaru theme color palette. You previously had to customize and change the folder color in Ubuntu 20.04 manually, but you no longer need to do that with this new addition. When you choose your preferred color, some system icons, folder icons, the color of buttons when you hover over them, and everything else in the system will use the same accent color.
Absolutely unnecessary. I mean, great.
Why would you say that it's unnecessary?
I don't know, because how hard was it to go in there and change the folder colors? There was about
I don't think
25 colors.
Yes, but I think you had to. Didn't you have to
You had
download
to,
the
yeah,
icon
you had
theme?
to install Yaru colors, I think.
Yeah, but now
Something
it's
like-
baked in.
So it's baked in. Great, I guess.
And you also, if you wanted to change the GTK theme color, you also had to install the other colors for that. But now everything's baked in. I wonder if it will work. Speaking of standardization, if it will work with different icon themes. For example, how the default folder colors for the Papyrus icon pack are blue, and you can download the package called Papyrus folders, and you can run a command in order to change the folder colors. So I wonder if in the future it will be possible to change just the global system color, accent color theme, and even third-party icon themes will be able to pick up on that.
Well, I mean, there again, that's they presumably they had to do something with libyaru to pull this off, which was the drop-in replacement for libadwaita.
Did they actually create a libyaru for this?
Well, I mean,
Because
how else would they completely apply their own?
But I thought that they are using GNOME 42, but none of the libadwaita apps
Okay.
for this release.
All right.
So maybe I'm mixing something up here. Maybe it's still GTK 3. Everything in Ubuntu 22.04.
So it's strange that you would apply a lot of complicated changes.
Well,
to-
it is an LTS
Yeah.
version, so I think it will be worth it for them.
I see. All right. Well, moving on. Sony engineer speeds Linux exFAT driver by 73%. Oh, finally. This is from Phoronix. The latest Linux exFAT driver improvement worth mentioning is a significant performance improvement from a Sony engineer. When an exFAT file system is mounted in its DirSync mode, the improvement reduces block requests when zeroing a cluster. In turn, this improved block request handling leads to 73% and higher performance improvements for tests carried out by Sony engineer.
Yuzhang Mo.
Oh, great. Yeah, Yuzhang Mo on an ARM test platform with SD card storage that is common for Microsoft exFAT file system storage. I had no idea speed was a problem with this.
Well, everything has been a problem with it. They've been cleaning up quite a bit. I think Samsung did a major rewrite of it,
Yeah.
and apparently now they found a way to speed it up over at Sony, and that's a good thing.
Yep, any improvement's a good thing.
It feels like exFAT is sort of an odd one out among file systems, because you have NTFS for Microsoft. Some people say it's not very good, but it works. At least it's always worked for me. But FAT32 had that limitation of file size. And as far as I know, exFAT is a patched up, modernized version of FAT32. But again, I don't know how it works under the hood. I think I had some issues with it. Once I was formatting something to exFAT in Linux, but Microsoft, the Windows wouldn't be able to recognize the partition. Then I formatted it in Windows and it worked in both systems.
The cool thing about exFAT that I've noticed is that you can mount it and use it in user space, and you ain't got to do
Yes.
anything as root with it. So it's
Yeah. But the fact that it works in user space makes it, I think it's what makes
Yeah.
it not very performant.
No, I've never used it for anything other than just thumb drives and SD cards that I'm going to throw some photos on or something like that, that I need to be able to access from any
Basically
type
anywhere.
of hard. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you want to just be able to access something on Windows and Linux, you can use NTFS. But if you also want to be able to access it from an Android phone, for example, I have an external SSD that I move between my computer and both Windows and Linux and my phone. So I have it formatted to exFAT. So exFAT is basically the only file system you can use to be able to move that stuff between all three kinds of devices. I read that Android is supposed to recognize ext4, but for some reason my phone doesn't. So maybe it's not implemented in every manufacturer's systems.
All right. So what do you got here, Moss?
Alibaba's 128-core ARM v9 server processor is ready for preview. From Tom's Hardware, Alibaba Cloud has started offering its clients a new type of instance powered by its own 128-core Yitian 710 server-grade system on chip, introduced last October. Apparently, the processor designed by Alibaba's T-Head subsidiary is now ready to power Alibaba's instances. But to try it, companies have to get an invitation from Alibaba, and the number of Yitian-powered instances is extremely limited. Alibaba's T-Head Yitian 710 server SoC packs 128 ARM v9 cores operating at 3.20 GHz. It has 8 DDR5-4800 memory channels that can provide the cores up to 307.2 gigabytes per second of bandwidth, as well as 96 PCIe 5.0 lanes to attach high-performance solid-state storage, network cards, and other devices. The Yitian integrates 60 billion transistors and is made using a 5-nanometer fabrication process, making it one of the most complex processors ever developed.
That sounds like it'd be fun to play with.
Yeah, let's get
Yeah,
one
I
down.
want one for my computer, yeah. Maybe it'll run circles around the Apple M1.
Yeah, you think it would run Moksha good?
Oh, I can see it on Bodhi. Bodhi has been talking, this is way off topic here. Bodhi has been asking people to tell the developers which of their themes that they like the most or the least, and they're going to be deprecating some of the themes and adding some new ones for the next version. I don't know if that's for 6.1 or for 7.0. Boy, did I get off topic.
Oh, you're fine. Because
It's news.
Yeah, it's news. That's what we're here for. And we've got no security or privacy updates, so moving on to the bi-weekly wanderings. Joe, what do you got going on?
Well, currently, between running for the school board and getting ready for the new position at work, I've had very little time to work on any projects or anything very Linux related. I've done a lot of block walking and done a couple of forums, both online and in person. Block walking, it's interesting. I get to meet people from all sides of the school debate. And it looks like I'm going to end up on TV tomorrow, which I don't think I've done before. I remember doing radio interviews as a kid, but definitely nothing on TV. Not that much different than YouTube, I guess. And then the new position at work, it's been delayed again, but they're still just waiting on paperwork to get settled so that I can move over to it. So we'll see when that happens. And no telling what my hours will be after the switch. But I'm sure it'll be fun and interesting. I have started using a new Android application called Teleprompter. And it is, you guessed it, a teleprompter. It's been very useful in making some of the campaign videos that I've been working on. And, well, they've been getting some pretty decent views. So, a friend of mine accidentally had a bottle of bubbles spilled on her MacBook. And now I have a chance to fix it. From what I can see online and a little bit of work I've been able to do on it, I have, I know it's one of the power rails that's shorted, but I still need to get the board the rest of the way out of the casing before I can work on it. And I have the back off. I've done some testing. I can see some of the voltages that are there. I can't find any shorts yet. I got 7 Samsung Level U Bluetooth headsets that I ordered from eBay. I got these because the drivers are decent and I can get them at a much better price than the one more triple drivers right now, which even broken are a bit exorbitant in price. I mean, I could see doing like $15, $10 for the one mores, but the cheapest you can get them even broken right this second is $25. So I was able to get some soldering in, which always helps my mood. But it takes like 15 minutes to print one of my newly redesigned casings and a couple of minutes to extract the wires and the driver, and hardly any time at all to solder both sides and put it together. All told, with printing, if I'm doing just one of them, I've got the process down to 25 minutes or less. I have been having to glue it all together, and that takes 4 hours of it sitting there, but that is it. I did find Moss's teeth, and I was able to get the modifications that he wanted done to it.
And
so
now he wants more.
Yeah, now Moss wants more fixing on those, so he's going to send them back to me, and I'm going to bust out the Dremel and get a bit more done. So between that and the 2 fixed players that I sent back to him, and the fixed headset, I forgot to ship the power supply and the other headset. Sorry about that, Moss. But they've all been shipped off, and Moss has them in his hands currently. I think he's got the headset on right now. At the time that I shipped Moss's stuff, I also sent off the bad battery for the XPS that was faulty. However, the replacement they sent me had the exact same problem. So I spent a bit of extra money and got another battery from iFixit for the laptop. And it came in and I tested it out, but I'm getting the same issue. Now I have to think that it's an issue on the motherboard. I've done some testing to try and find the problem, but this is a bit outside my normal space and I'm not finding the issue. The only other things that I can think to do next is either take a chance and buy another motherboard and hope it works, or buy a working laptop, the Dell XPS 139360, and see if I can find any differences between the 2 boards. And well, it would also give me a way to test the 2 batteries that I have. Now, I did get the RAM that Josh sent me. Thank you, Josh. At the time of writing this, I still have not put it in. I really need to. My server is giving me problems and maxing out the RAM and the swap while running Chrome and my VM and various chat applications. So it's definitely something that I need to get to, and preferably soon, because I guess 16 gigs of RAM just, aren't enough for everything that I do, which sounds absolutely crazy to me, since I think my first computer had probably less than 256 meg of RAM forever and a day ago.
Sounds like it's a job for Antics Linux.
Yeah. All right, Norbert, what have you been up to?
Well, recently on a Linux user space stream, the Mate desktop came up, specifically the origin of its name and pronunciation. And Mate is pronounced the way it is because it's named after a South American beverage of the same name, which I tried before a couple of times, but this conversation made me want to drink it again. I think I haven't had Mate in years. So, and the timing was also great, because I ran out of black breakfast tea, which was my source of caffeine of choice. And since Mate has caffeine, it would be a suitable replacement. So one thing I read about Mate is in multiple places is how it's a perfect middle ground between coffee and tea. It has less caffeine than coffee, but more than tea. And supposedly, if you drink Mate, you don't get the jittery side effects of coffee, but you still get more, and you get more focus than with tea. So apparently, it's better for improving focus than both coffee and tea. Focus and concentration. But I also wanted to experience a traditional way of drinking mate, which is done from a gourd, an actual gourd. They turn those into little cups with a straw that has a strainer built in. Nowadays, they usually use metal straws. So I ordered myself a gourd, knowing myself if I ordered the traditional proper gourd made out of a gourd, I would inevitably forget to clean it out and leave the wet mate leaves in it, and it would get moldy. So what I got, to be on the safe side, is a ceramic gourd, sort of a fake gourd, but I have a proper straw. And for those who are watching the video, there's this flat head on the straw that has a strainer built in. Right now it's dirty with leaves because I was drinking it. Now I ran out of mate. But the cool thing is that they basically, this is like a 200 milliliter gourd, and they fill it up with dry leaves. I think more than halfway through. So if you drink mate this way, and you keep refilling it with water because you can re-steep it, you end up consuming more caffeine than with a strong cup of tea, which is interesting. But if you just were to steep the mate leaves like you would steep tea, you would still get more caffeine than from tea, but less than if you were drinking like a proper strong cup of coffee. I don't really drink coffee. I haven't drank coffee for years. I've been sticking to tea. But what's interesting is that sometimes when I just stop drinking tea for maybe a week, sometimes I just go on I wouldn't call it a detox, but sometimes it feels necessary to just stop drinking tea because green tea is acidic. If I drink green tea for like 1 or 2 weeks every day, multiple times a day, I think I need to spend some time not drinking any tea. And even if I don't drink any caffeine, I don't feel any withdrawal symptoms. So I think my tolerance for caffeine is pretty high. But whenever I'm tired or I have to focus something, I do notice that it helps me focus significantly. So for about a week, I've been drinking mate every day, and I think the effects were stronger than if I were just drinking a cup of tea. Previously, I would just lately I've been drinking English breakfast tea, more specifically the Yorkshire brand of tea, which I really like. It's my favorite English tea, and it did a good job at waking me up whenever I got too little sleep. But yeah, it's interesting. You can even steep mate with cold water, which I think I prefer because it doesn't start out as strong as it would. Apparently, it's full of vitamins and antioxidants, so it's just as healthy as green tea, but it's not as expensive as a good quality green tea. So in more than one way, it seems to be a really good middle ground between coffee and tea. So if anyone is looking to maybe ditch coffee for something else, but finds tea to be not strong enough, they could give mate a try. Not coincidentally, from the same conversation on the stream, I also decided to try the Mate desktop. I installed Ubuntu Mate 2204 beta. I haven't really played around with it, but I might do in the next 2 weeks so I can report my findings. I'm doing it on the premise that it seems to be very similar to XFCE, which I'm using. So I'm really interested to see just how similar it is, because I know GNOME 2 was very popular. And I think that's all I wanted to say. So how about you, Moss?
Well, how about me? I got an early start on LMD E5. My results will be reported later in the show. I tried to install SolidK EE12, but the installer said I didn't have a Wi-Fi card. I installed SolidK 10 instead, proving that they know how to find my fairly standard Wi-Fi. I remained in contact with the forum for a couple of weeks until I gave up and installed Linux Lite 5.8. The forum people were really nice and they tried to help and they got me up to version 11, but I had to change the location of the repos and I still wasn't really getting it to work right. So I finally gave up and installed Linux Lite 5.8 and I've had no problems whatever with that. I got my box back from Joe, as he mentioned earlier, minus a few things that, like he said, he'll send along. The COS headphones were welcome, much more comfortable than the ones I've been using. For those of you watching, let's see, I should have those here. Oh, nope, don't see them. Oh, here they are. This is what I was using. They were $5 at Dollar General. As you can see, the ear cups are much smaller than these. So it's nice to have headphones that fit my ears. I know Joe said they were too small for his.
The only thing nice on those is the cable is reusable.
Yeah. I tried to remove Bluetooth from my Raspberry Pi 4 last night. It was just, I didn't need it. I wasn't using it. And I thought it might load faster because it wouldn't have to load the Bluetooth driver. I could have just told it not to load the Bluetooth driver, but no, I tried to remove it. Somehow I managed to remove a bunch of libraries that Kodi needed, and I am told that they are not installable. So my days of Kodi are over, as even if I could reinstall Kodi, the plugins I use appear to be no longer available. Yes, I know I can get Kodi on Android TV and other sticks, but you can't authorize the plugins without a full browser experience. I also know that there's lots of free streaming TV out there, but most of it is not on demand. It doesn't carry most of the shows I watch, and you have to pore over pages of badly organized schedules to find anything. And I've been talking with Joe and Bill about these things, and there are some things I could try, some things I could try that I don't know about yet, that Joe mentioned before the show started. Apparently he covered in the past episode that I didn't listen to. Sad me. And I guess that's about it for me. My car is running. We go get the catalytic converter fixed, which is going to be over $900 replaced. How about you, Bill? I give up.
Those catalytic converters, I'll tell you what.
Well, this is not the little muffler type one on the tailpipe. This is the big one that bolts right onto the head. Yeah.
And if you try to bypass it, the computer, it's like they know, and the computer makes it run like crap.
Yeah, and I'm getting 34 miles per gallon out of this car, so I'd rather have it running well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would just run like garbage without it, because it would throw off the vacuum and all that stuff. Well, work has kept me a little preoccupied these last couple weeks. I imagine that's a narrative that'll continue on into the future. Anyone who tuned into the last episode of the Roundtable would have been keenly aware of the trouble I had getting Discord to work with my Bluetooth headset on my phone. This turned out to be yet another shortcoming of the Discord platform. Okay, let me preface by saying I was in a bad mood when I wrote this. Honestly, all that being said, I would give up anything to steer the podcast away from its complete dependence on this black box proprietary platform. On my other show, Three Fat Truckers, we have switched over to a completely new solution for making the show. It's called VDO.Ninja. The beauty of this solution is that it requires no software installation since it runs from the browser. This means it is platformed independent, and literally any device with a web browser, camera, and microphone can connect and make a flawless podcast with clean video feeds and absolutely no lagging. Or at least that was my experience. We did our last show using this new solution, and I was steered to this solution, referred to it by Destination Linux, because I wrote them an email about a month ago because I was really getting a little frustrated, because one big shortcoming that really irritates me about Discord is like right now, the other guys on the show wouldn't notice because they're seeing an image of me on their screen with my server off to their right, and they're seeing the image the way it should be. But since I am the one that's capturing the screen and streaming it off, you're getting a mirror image of me in the YouTube screen. So I can't have anything in my background with any writing, or else it would be backwards. And some people might be able to deal with that, but my personality is not such that I'm able to deal with that. So all the guys will look fine except for the person that is streaming, and Discord does not give you any functionality to flip your individual feed over And I can only imagine it's because they don't want you using this software for this purpose. Otherwise, it would be there. You can do it in literally every other platform. You can flip your video feed in Jitsi and Teams and Zoom, all of them, and of course in this Video Ninja too. But in Video Ninja, you have the ability to take a URL stream and pipe that directly into OBS Studio. So this is software that integrates itself directly into OBS, and there's no need for any kind of window capturing magic going on or anything like that. It's absolutely fantastic. If you go to the website, you'll notice it's a little old looking. Some of the controls, some of the buttons, honestly, the design is not the best, but its functionality is just absolutely priceless, in my opinion. And let's say you are the one that creates the room, and you send the link or the invitation to the other people, and then you start streaming. And if they have problems on their end, any technical problems, you've got a director's interface right there in front of you. You can literally fix their problems from your interface. So this is perfect for a podcast like mine, like Three Fat Truckers, where I'm trying to babysit a couple 7-year-olds on the other end, and they like to play with their toys. So if they screw something up, I'm able to get on there and fix it. So, immediately I fell in love with this thing. But anyway, that's just how I kind of see it with Discord. I think they want you to pay for their streaming service, and that's why they make things a little bit more difficult, a little less functional for people that are relying on it. So anyway, that all being said, another thing I've been working on is the complete overhaul of my Nextcloud server that I've been running on my Rock Pro 64. Some of this is partly because I'm trying to steer away from the Snap ecosystem, and some of it is because I'm sort of actively searching for a possible solution if we have to completely abandon ship on the Google Drive thing for the show. I want to make sure that we've got a seamless way of keeping all of our stuff backed up, our show notes and our show audio, and I have achieved that. But for my part, I just wanted to get away from the Snap thing because I'm not saying there's anything wrong with snaps, but I don't know enough to know if there's anything wrong with it. And you have these strange things happening in the community, like ex-Snapcraft engineers creating scripts to convert all your snaps over to Flatpak, and then we're supposed to just interpret that as him just doing it for fun. I don't know. That just seems... People, they do these things, and then they're not real clear if there was any technical reason for them to do it. But I don't know if they understand or not how much the things they do are interpreted by the community, and then people in the community will react on those things that they do. And it's true, they do. And I'm no different.
I don't really know how snaps work under the hood either, except that these are loop devices essentially. So I think what people don't like, among one of the things that people don't like, is how it is containerized, but maybe a bit over containerized for desktop use. Because with Flatpaks are also containerized, but they don't have to be extracted and mounted like snaps do. And I still don't really see any problem with snaps on the server.
Yeah.
But because you don't have Flatpaks on the server, there really isn't a debate about what you should use on a server. Well, maybe, I guess, snaps or native packages. But, the things about universal package managers that people sometimes complain about them not blending in with the system theme and stuff, that's not really a concern on a server if you're running headless.
No, and it's, like I said, I don't know enough to be able to pass any meaningful judgment. And to be fair, that Nextcloud server, I think I had about 2 years of that running without any incident whatsoever. So I can't really say that I had any technical imperative to switch over. I mean, part of it was me wanting to learn how to put all that stuff together, because you do have to build the LAMP stack and then install it from the website. Well, download it from the website and move it, and then set up modules for the PHP modules for all that stuff to work right. And it was a learning experience that I wanted to do more than anything else. But I do notice, though, once it's up and running, it seems to be more performant than it was before. But I can't tell if that's because when I installed the Snap, I just went with all the default settings, and the PHP config and all that. And with this new installation, I actually I linked to the YouTube video here that I followed, and his accompanying blog post, learnlinux.tv. He's got a couple of fantastic tutorials on there with blog posts to go along with it, so that you've got all the copy and paste stuff that you need, because you've got to execute a couple of really long install commands, because there's a lot of stuff that has to get installed to get all your Apache and your MariaDB, and that's another thing. It was, you learn how to set up databases, and then installing the Apache server and all the getting an SSL certificate and all that stuff. It was a cool learning experience, I think. The other thing I was never really comfortable with the Snap was that in order to, like in my case, the operating system is installed on the eMMC card, and so is the Snap, of course, but I want to use the 2 big Iron Wolf drives in there to store all the stuff on. But the Snap is confined, and the only way to overcome that limitation is to either bind mount your storage into the /var/snap/nextcloud/common/nextcloud/data. You've got to either bind mount your storage in that, or if you're using ZFS, set the data set to mount to that. And that always felt kind of hacky, in my opinion. So that when you install it native, like I did, you've got the ability to tell Nextcloud itself where your storage is. So it seems a little bit more congruent that way. Oh yeah, like I said, the first thing I did, I completely rebuilt this thing from the ground up. I went with the Debian Stable Edition, which is about the only, well, there's a Manjaro build out there for the Rock Pro, but it's not server oriented. It's more desktop. Debian, you can install it, and it's just like it is Debian proper going on this thing, and it goes through the whole process of asking the questions and then setting up the drives and everything, and then you've got a working Debian server. It's text-based, the installer is, but it's graphical enough. It's the old text-based installer that we were used to with Debian before they started using the, what was the one they used, the Calamares, or the one that they're using now? The installer? I don't know. Anyway.
Debian, if you boot in with a live ISO, then it uses Calamares, but otherwise the net install just uses the Ncurses-based Debian installer.
So the netboot installer would use the Ncurses-based, I would assume then. But that's what you've got with this. The next step.
If it had a blue background, that is the Ncurses one.
Right. Yeah. The next step was to install the ZFS file system, which, is just a couple of commands, the DKMS package and all that, and then create the pools and data sets that I wanted to put the stuff on. And as I said before, a Nextcloud installation can be divided up into 4 parts. At least, it can be divided up a lot more than that, but 4 major parts. Installation, configuration of a database such as MariaDB. You could also use MySQL. I mean, I suppose you could get things like InfluxDB or something like that working. Installation, configuration of the web server. In this case, I used Apache. Nginx is another popular option. Then installation, configuration of PHP, which is the scripting language for the server. The way I kind of understand it, it is kind of the way things are communicated between the web server and the database. And then from there you download, unzip the Nextcloud server software, and then you have to move that to the /var, the proper /var directory. In my case, I followed exactly what I wish I knew the guy's name, but the guy in LearnLinux.tv, he named his directory after the fully qualified domain name of his server, and then you move that to the /var/www directory. The instructions given in that video I linked above are excellent and easy to follow, and in about an hour I had my own Nextcloud instance up and running, and I had my domain name registered with Let's Encrypt so that HTTPS is working, and now everything is running great. I type in, it's fully qualified, and my domain resolves straight to my Nextcloud now. Nextcloud's a great solution. It's worth taking the time to learn, because you can throw it on a Raspberry Pi with a little bit of storage, and you can have your own. You don't have to expose it to the internet if you don't want to. You can just use it there in your home, and you could even just set up a WireGuard and just WireGuard back into your home if you needed access to it from outside your network. And like I said, it's a great solution for anyone. So that's it for me. Moving on to our Linux innards. This week we are talking about our experiences with LMDE5, codenamed Elsie. First up, we got Moss.
Well, that's good, because that means we're almost done with the show.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Well, I downloaded and installed Elsie before it got announced, but after it came out of beta, so I was right on top of it. I got it installed and set up. I rebooted. It booted to an initramfs prompt. Rebooting, I noticed that during the boot process, the system identified several drives in RAID 6 configuration on my T540P, which only has 2 drives and no RAID. I could not figure out what to do, so I reinstalled. Same thing. Did it again. Same thing. Finally, someone in the Mint forum pointed me to a page which said I needed to run FSCK. I ran it with a few different switches based on what was in the file he sent me. Some things worked, others didn't, but when I rebooted it all seemed fine. In fact, on nearly all boots it works, but I'm still getting the random initramfs boot. I run Mint for its stability and consistency. LMDE isn't there yet on the booting end. For information on running FSCK, check this file in the show notes that Londoner got me. It's far better than the one the guys in the Mint forum gave me. I need to go back over my installation using the information from this file, and I haven't done that yet. When it works, it still doesn't feel quite as free and open as in beer as Ubuntu, but I'm pretty sure I could use it if I had to, but never as my only boot. I wish it was available with Mate so I could tell for sure. There are all kinds of bells and whistles in Cinnamon which don't help me in any way, sounds, animation, etc., and I'm having to find out where to turn them off by them to my satisfaction. I'm sure for some of you Cinnamon users, they're exactly why you're using Cinnamon, but for a Mate user like me, they're exactly why I'm not using Cinnamon. That's what I had. What about you, Norbert?
What do you mean by not being as free and open as in beer, as Ubuntu?
It just doesn't feel right. It feels like I have to banged my head against some walls that shouldn't even be there. That I don't need to. And
Okay,
when
so not in money, but in time invested. I mean,
in time and in effort, yeah.
well, for me this is interesting because I haven't really used either Mint or Cinnamon long term before. So since this is my first time at giving Cinnamon I wouldn't say I gave it more time than I as much time as I wanted, but I'll describe my experiences with it and I compare it to XFCE, which I use. Second, since I've used Debian itself extensively, although not Mint or MD, I'd also like to compare it to Debian itself. And finally, since I've heard that the user experience is supposed to be really close to Mint itself, this is also a good opportunity for me to give my opinion on the Mint experience as a whole. So first I want to give props to the new installer, which I'm not sure, is this an installer specifically developed by the Mint team? Because it doesn't look like the new Ubuntu installer.
I've never seen it before.
Okay, it's really nice. There are some really nice small details in there. First, it uses gparted if you want to manually edit your partitions, which I really like because, for example, the Ubiquiti installer or even Calamares, if you just want to do an automated install, it's great. But if you want to go into manual partitioning, the built-in partitioner tools in those installers aren't particularly great. At least, at least for me. But Pop! OS, the Pop! OS installer, for example, just throws you into gparted if you want to modify the partitions, and I think that's a really good way to do it because I've heard people criticize this by saying that gparted isn't very user friendly, but by default, if you just want to create partitions or stuff like that, I think the gparted UI is straightforward. And if you want to do some more complicated stuff, it also gives you opportunity for that. So I really like how it integrates gparted into the installer, and it also gives you the option to select a partition if you have multiple EFI partitions to which one you want to install grab to, if you even want to, because you can deselect grab if you don't want to install the bootloader altogether. Previously, if I wanted to install anything Ubuntu based without grab, you have to run Ubiquiti-B, which from the terminal, which will result in an installation not including grab. But now, if this installer, I hope something like this will find its way into Ubuntu and Fedora and other stuff, because Fedora seems to be really stubborn when it comes to removing grab. Even if I try to, I just for the fun of it, I tried to remove grab from Fedora to see if I could do it. It says it's a protected package, but even if I try to uninstall it with specifying that no, yes, I want to uninstall the protected packages, it still didn't let me. So interesting. Overall, I really like this installation experience compared
Norbert,
to both. Yes,
I've never heard about the TIC-B, but I've always had a / no bootloader. Ubiquiti / no bootloader.
can you specify flags with slashes in the terminal?
Yeah.
I mean,
I've done it many times on Ubuntu. I just haven't used Ubuntu for a while.
I don't mean Ubiquiti-B, Ubiquiti --B, so it's TAC-B. It's flag. And if we do that, it will still require you to specify the EFI partition, but it won't put its grab onto there.
It might be a TAC no bootloader, but I remember it being a /, and I could be wrong because I am frequently.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure.
If you put a / it's going to think you're talking about a directory.
Yeah, so it's probably a -- no bootloader.
Yeah.
I didn't even know about the proper long one, so I guess it's the same thing but shorter. So once I installed it, it really did feel like Mint, because I haven't really used Mint, but I did try Mint multiple times. And well, first of all, the Cinnamon desktop. It's very interesting to me because I've been using XFCE and GNOME. I've also recently tried Mate and now Cinnamon. For me, among all the GTK-based desktops, Cinnamon feels like the most Plasma-ish. I guess I could put it. Because Plasma and Cinnamon are... Well, Cinnamon doesn't really have as many options for customization, but Cinnamon is, well, I would say it's the most Windows-like user experience. I don't mean it in either a good or a bad way, because it's subjective whether a Windows experience is something that's for you or not. But for example, the settings menu is really similar to XFC, which I like. Although in XFC, I rarely go into the settings manager, because you can just search because each sub item of the settings manager you can just search for, because they appear as different applications. So, and I guess that's how I prefer to it, because I don't have to find stuff. I can just type and open what I want, the settings which I want. I really like the Cinnamon panel. On the Cinnamon panel, you have a center area, so you can center align various modules, not to the center of the free space, but to the center of the screen itself, which is something that you can do on Budgie, for example. You can do it on GNOME with Dash2 panel, but it's something that is lacking in XFCE. And the only way I can properly align my open app icons, I like to have the menu button on the left and the system chair on the right, but have the open window buttons in the center. I guess it's similar to how Windows 11 does it, but Windows 11 also puts the search and the window and the start button in the middle with the other buttons, and I sort of like to keep it separate. So on XFC, I have to set 3 different panels on the left, middle, and the right side of the screen, and just put my icons in the center one. So it's not a clean solution, but I really appreciate how Cinnamon can do that. Also, one interesting feature in Cinnamon that I didn't know before it existed is the hot corners. So you can set different actions for each of the 4 corners. Even a GNOME-like. Well, I should say not GNOME-like, but if you press Alt-Tab on Windows or any other desktop, I think, you have this application selector. So I tried that. I tried this in a VM, in VirtualBox, and somehow I didn't really manage to get graphical acceleration working, so I missed out on the animations. But overall, I think Cinnamon is a much more featureful desktop than I previously thought. And I also want to give a shout out to the Nemo file manager. I've used it before, even not on Cinnamon, because I was looking for something that would work on with a touch screen. Because the only file manager that I found works well on a touch screen is Nautilus. I assume because it has proper full Wayland support. But for example, on XFC's tuner, I can select items, but I can't use double click to open them on a touch screen. On Nemo, it works, but I had weird experiences with selecting, just dragging and selecting multiple items. So for now, even if I'm using something like Sway, so Window Manager on Wayland on my laptop, I still stick to Nautilus because it doesn't have a lot of features, but if I just want to navigate the file system on a touch screen, it's still the one that I found to be the best. Nonetheless, I really like Cinnamon, how it's way more resourceful. It has way more features than Nautilus. It really reminds me of Tuner. And if I don't have to care about touch support, I could see myself using it on the desktop. I might in the future. Well, as far as comparing LMD to Debian goes, I don't really know what to say, because on the surface it really doesn't feel like Debian, because if you don't have to get into the terminal and to mess with your system, it really doesn't feel any different from Mint itself, from my brief experience with both. And what I really like about Mint itself is the Flatpak integration and the FlatHub integration in the Software Center. Software centers are one of those things that each desktop and each distro seems to have their own implementation, but what did I want to say here? The Software Center. Well, at least I really appreciate distros that have FlatHub enabled by default. because with both Debian and Ubuntu RTS-based distros, it solved the major issue of eventually having outdated software. But I haven't really tested how well Flatpak apps integrate into the desktop, because I know that so far my best experience with the Flatpak integration via portals and stuff has been on Fedora, which is I just stuck with Fedora. But even though I like Cinnamon in the same way that I like Mate, I still haven't really found anything that I like more than XFCE. I guess I probably said this before, but XFCE feels like the most window manager like desktop environment, if that's even the right way to put it. Because with a window manager, so XFCE feels like if someone spent time configuring a window manager identic features, but you don't have to configure it pre-configured. So I really wanted to try and see LMDE with XFCE, but I didn't really want to add XFCE on top of it because that would have defeated the point of trying it as it is. But I would have really liked it if there was an XFCE and a Mate version of it. But I think more and more that whenever Mint 21 comes out, I will try their XFCE version. Even if I don't end up finding another desktop environment that I like, I would like to see how their implementation of XFCE is. So yeah, I haven't had as much time to try LMD5 as I wanted to, but if someone wanted I mean, it's an interesting period because in a few months we will have Linux Mint 21, and if there was someone who wanted me to install Linux for them, I would probably either choose Mint or Zorin. And when it comes to Mint, whenever Mint 21 comes out, the packages will be more up to date than with the Debian base. So I like it as a proof of concept, but I'm not sure if for the average user it would be worth going with LMD5 instead of Mint proper, especially if they don't really understand what's going on under the hood. And for those people who do, well, it really comes down to whether they prefer Debian or Ubuntu, because most of the stuff is pretty much the same. And now that both versions will have the option of using the graphical upgrade tool to upgrade to the new version, I don't really... So I think, yeah, we've covered how Mint didn't really have a proper way, proper upgrade path from major version to major version. But if that is going to be consistently solved between the two versions, yeah, I'm not sure where to put Debian, Linux Mint Debian edition, to be honest. I prefer Debian to Ubuntu, so if I wanted to switch to Mint, and if the Debian edition had an XFCE version, I would probably choose that. I talk a lot. I talk a lot while I say nothing, say very little. I should try to work on fixing that.
You're fine.
Just turn your mic off. It works.
Yeah, okay, I do that now. Bill?
Well, a couple things that you mentioned, Flatpak. I installed a couple Flatpaks on it. Well, let me preface by saying that I installed it on a virtual machine, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I did install some Flatpaks, and everything ran pretty much the same as it would on a regular installation of Mint. You have all of the... I mean, if you take into account that you've got access to Flatpaks right out of the box, software availability is about... I mean, most people will not notice any difference between it and the Ubuntu version. In fact, I think unless you get in and try to look to install an upgraded kernel or try to install drivers through the GUI, I dare say, unless you know a lot about Mint, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between this and the regular flagship Cinnamon edition. That being said, if you do install it and you do have those challenges where you need a driver installed, you're going to have to go and you're going to have to look for instructions on how to do it from Debian, which is going to throw a lot of people into a sadness loop right off the get-go. Not to say that these things aren't available, and it's not to say that they're not going to be incorporated into LMDE from the get-go. I've always felt that this was a hedge that the Mint team they've been keeping this thing alive. I mean, people use it and they depend on it and they take it seriously. But I've always felt like this has been a hedge, that they've got a hot swap in place, ready to go if Canonical just takes Ubuntu completely off the rails. Mint can say, "Ha, we're good," and just keep right on going, because it does. I mean, from what I could tell, the experience was just fine. I did a couple of crazy things with it just to have something to talk about. Like you were talking about XFCE. Well, I did try to install that and swap Cinnamon out with it. And I'm sure there's like a few things you could install to make it work a little bit better, but you don't just install XFCE, restart it, and get an experience similar to the XFCE edition of Linux Mint. It comes up with all the stock XFCE stuff, basically. And then you can change it back to the Mint X theme, but there's still a lot of things that have to be done to make it work that they don't ship a stock Linux Mint XFCE experience in one meta package, or at least I didn't find it anywhere. It's not in the repo that's built in, but it could be out there. I just didn't do enough research into it. The other thing I tried, I wanted to try and see what would happen if I installed it and switch the repos from Bullseye to SID. I wanted to see how it would react to that and see if I could achieve some semblance of a rolling distribution, a rolling Linux Mint, so to speak, because I think that would be the one cool thing that I could do with this that would be useful to me. And no, what you end up with is some strange hybrid cinnamon mate experience. It was weird. It was a cinnamon panel with the mate menu, and a lot of accelerations didn't work, and I'll get to that too in a minute. So yeah, what I did was I installed it and ran all the updates, got it working. It was working fine, no problem. And then I went into the /etc/apt. You got to go another directory deep to get at the sources list in LMDE. You got to go to sources.list.d, and then the sources list is in that directory. And then you can change it from Bullseye to SID, and then sudo apt update, and it had over 1,200 updates that was available at that point. So I went ahead and pulled the trigger and did it, and then did the reboot, and that's when I was presented with this terrible amalgamation of cinnamon and mate. I probably could have worked out how to get it all back working again, but I didn't want to put the time into.
Didn't Josh say the same?
I don't know if he.
Yes, Josh said that when he updated the SID, he wound up with mate, and he hated mate.
Well,
so
yeah,
he just killed it and did something else.
And I looked into it a little further. It wasn't actually mate. I mean, you are given the mate menu, and that is weird because why is that even there? But you go looking at all the other stuff on the panel, and it is actually the cinnamon panel. It just gives you the mate menu for some reason. So somehow the mate menu or the mint menu. I should say, that Mint puts into their Mate edition comes up when you do that transition, but yet the entire rest of the panel and all of the other applets and the entire rest of the desktop experience was Cinnamon. So if anybody's got an explanation to that, great, but I don't. Yeah. So
I think it's that. Can you hear me?
yeah, something went crazy
Okay.
there.
With my microphone, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me fine?
Yeah. You're good.
Oh, I will have.
It
I will
blew
have
up
to
for a
disable this.
second, but after that, you were fine.
Yeah, okay. My microphone stopped working, so I unplugged and replugged it. By some miracle, Audacity picked it up and continued recording with it. But for that few seconds, it went up with Audacity as well. So maybe it's something got mixed up with the dependencies, because the base repository was switched from Bullseye to Seed, but the overlaid Mint repo is still thinking that you're running a Bullseye base. So maybe if somehow it wasn't able to resolve dependencies and switched out the package, the Cinnamon menu with the Mate menu.
Yeah, and I saw those repositories in the list, and I was hoping that the only thing that was in those repositories was just some of the Cinnamon stuff, and some of the Mint tools that is really only in Mint. But for whatever reason, you ended up with that. Which is fine. After I did that, I did remember that Josh had a similar experience talking on Distro Hoppers Digest. Apparently, Moss is trying to chase a mouse. Well, anyway, the other thing...
Sorry, had a thigh cramp that was really bugging me. How?
I hope you got it worked out there.
I think so.
But so yeah, I didn't dig into it any deeper. I went ahead and just restarted over. I mean, it's a virtual machine. I can spin up another one in no time. Yeah, searching. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to address was hardware acceleration, because this isn't only a problem in LMDE, but every time I've ever tried to install anything Cinnamon in a virtual machine, I get a warning about hardware acceleration not working. Well, I fixed it, folks. And I linked to the website where a guy did a blog post, and he explained exactly how to work this out. But I'll go ahead and outline it real quick here, what he had written in his blog post. The open source stack for doing accelerated graphics in Vert Manager or GNOME boxes, it's the exact same thing. It's all QEMU in the back end and libvirt. The open source stack is called Spice. For a guest to use Spice, it needs the Spice-VD agent package to be installed. The guest OS needs this installed, not the host. After you install that, you can shut the guest down and then go into the settings on Vert Manager. The first thing you need to do is change the video element from QXL to the Vert IO driver, and then click the box that says 3D acceleration. Then you need to go to the you need to save that. Next, go to the display option and change that from OpenGL rendering. Change the listening type to none, meaning it's not using any TLS or anything like that. And then click the OpenGL checkbox. You got to do it in that order. And then save that page, reboot the system, and you will have hardware acceleration working in a virtual machine for Cinnamon. And And I have to imagine that that's probably the same. It might be the same with GNOME, although GNOME and Plasma, neither one of those has ever complained about hardware acceleration. But I can't imagine either one of those would be any different. Like I said before, the unfortunate thing about LMDE is that it lacks a couple of the tools that make the Mint experience a bit easier to get up and running with. It lacks the driver manager tool, which is basically, for anybody that's not familiar, it's a tool built into Linux Mint that basically will source your system and look for any hardware that does not have a driver installed, and then either offer you an open source driver or a closed source alternative. This is what you would need to get like your NVIDIA hardware up and running or something like that. And it makes it real easy to just click and choose, and then do your restart and you're up and running. Well, LMDE doesn't come with this. The other thing it doesn't have is the ability to... Linux Mint has got a tool built into the upgrade manager that allows you to upgrade to a newer kernel. If you, for example, if you've got a piece of hardware that is newer, that has components that require firmware newer than that's in the kernel that was installed by default, and this is actually something I dealt with when I built this system here. I actually had to update to the 5.13 kernel to get it working right. And you don't have that. I mean, what you end up having to do is you got to do things the Debian way. And so you have to go and you have to search the Debian knowledge base to find out how to work the right incantations to get your hardware running, and likewise to get your kernel updated, because you can, you can get your kernel updated through apt, no problem, but you have to know what packages to go look for. And if you've got DKMS running, you're going to need to know that you need the kernel headers for that particular kernel, so it's not nearly as straightforward. But then again, I wouldn't recommend this to a beginner. If I was trying to get somebody on Linux, I would recommend the regular versions of Mint, or like was said before, I would recommend Zorin or something like that. And then if they were comfortable with the terminal, they were comfortable with the Debian way of doing things, and then I would recommend something like this. But I don't think it was meant for beginning users, and I think if this was, I honestly think if this was the most popular version of Linux Mint people were using, then, maybe a little bit more effort would go into the tooling for things like that, Because technically, I don't see any reason why you couldn't make tools like that work. They just require the connection to a little bit of a different background framework. But anyway, that was my, I would say overall that my experience with it was positive. And as long as I left it alone, I didn't do anything crazy with it. It performed as well as flagship Mint does, and you've got all the access to the flat packs and everything like that. So, I have to say, as far as I'm happy it exists. I hope it continues to exist, and I look forward to playing around with it in the future. But that's about all I got. What do you got, Joe?
Well, I didn't get to test much, but I was able to install LMDE5 and do some minor testing on the XPS 139360, which, while it doesn't work on battery, does work if you have it hooked up to a power supply. It installed very easy. I didn't find much that was different from a normal Mint install, nothing difficult or really worth talking about, which is really what you want from, an initial install. It looked a little different, but nothing exceptional. And well, I did notice that I could not update the kernel from the updater. That's not that big a deal unless, well, there are manual ways to install it. So now I was able to install many of my normal use applications and also run them without any issues, like VLC, X2Go, SSHFS, and Steam, all which installed through apt, and they all just worked. No issues whatsoever. And then I also installed Snapd for testing purposes, and it did work, and I didn't have to do any extra configuration. And it just, the only thing I noticed is that after I installed the application, even after a restart, it was not showing up in my start menu. So, like, I installed Mumble, and then, I hit the Windows key and type Mumble, and it's not there. And that is a small thing. I know that there's ways to force it to be there, or I could just, make my own icon for it and have it run the snap run Mumble, but that's a bit more work. And so that's the only real negative I have. All in all, I can see this as a really easy replacement for, well, I have it listed as Ubuntu Mint in there, but no, yes, as a replacement for the Ubuntu version of Linux Mint. So yeah, I might give it a try on one of my main machines and see how well that goes, just for the fun of it. But most of my machines, I would have to manually force the drivers on, so there is a bit of extra work for that, because the NVIDIA drivers on my laptop inside would be the first issue there. And I know you said that the driver installer is not there, but that is one thing I did not check on and did not think to look for.
Well, I did install NVIDIA drivers on my machine since it has an NVIDIA card on it, and it wasn't a problem. You just had to go into terminal and use apt.
And Bullseye also doesn't have the latest NVIDIA drivers. So if it's something to keep in mind if it's an issue for someone. I think it has the 460 or 470 drivers.
I'm not sure if there's a way. Yes.
I'm not sure if there's a way to get the 510 drivers on the LMDE5 or even Debian Bullseye.
Well, my machine ran well on the 470 driver, but then my machine is old enough that it's not supposed to run on the 470 driver, so I don't need anything newer.
And you're better off anyway, because the newer drivers, they're built to work with newer kernels. The NVIDIA story, I don't know if that's ever going to get any better. You're better off just not buying NVIDIA hardware, I guess.
It's better than it was 10 years ago, that's for sure.
That's saying quite a lot. But anyway, so that's our story with LMDE. It seems like our experiences, for the most part, were positive and less than overwhelming, which I suppose that's what you want in a distribution like Mint. You want things to just start up and work,
Right. We're not running Arch here. We want it to just work.
Correct. So, vibrations from the ether. No vibrations, folks. You need to send us some vibrations.
Well, I think we need to get more shows out.
Got to get some more shows out.
Yeah.
In the check this out section, the only thing I put in here, the Video Ninja. I put a link in there just because I'm so excited about this thing. I want everybody to I want you to think about this before you go to bed tonight. Video Ninja. I want you to bring it up and look at it. It's really cool. I linked to the website here, and it is literally a website. This thing will run from the browser on your phone. We did our last show. Steve connected to this through Firefox on his phone and filmed the show, and it was brilliant. So I'm excited about it. I want everybody to go check it out. So vdo.ninja for anybody that's interested. Norbert, what do you got?
First, I want to make sure that I haven't brought this already for check this out. It's Metadata Cleaner, which is a GNOME Circle app. So I haven't brought this already, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay. It's not something that I found useful for my case. It's more like it was enlightening to see just how many. Okay, I started again. So this is Metadata Cleaner, which is a GNOME Circle app. It's available on FlatHub, and it wasn't really particularly useful for anything I wanted to do, but I still found it interesting enough to check out, and I just found it fascinating just how many tags and how much metadata is in a file. For example, I looked at a Photoshop file, a PNG image that I exported from Photoshop, and it had like dozens of metadata. And you can just, if you for some reason wanted to clean a file of all metadata, you can just do that with one click with this app, and you can even list all the metadata that it can find that is in that file. It's really handy. It's really minimalistic, gets to the point, and it's pretty much the best way, most straightforward way of cleaning metadata from files that I've seen so far. I think I've seen different methods for images and video and audio files separately, and even some CLI implementations. But this is just a really nice GUI app. It also is the app that I mentioned previously that uses libert beta, but has this really nice purple colored header bar. Which I really like, which I'd really like to see more in the future. It would give libert beta absolutely bit of personality. So, and on that note, I really encourage people to look at the GNOME Circle apps as a whole as well, because there are some really nice gems in there. I think you can look them up on. Wait a second. Yeah, circle.gnome.org. And that's it.
It's interesting. Yeah, you go to gnomecircle.org, and it's apparently they're trying to sell this.
Circle.
Yeah.
Circle.gnome.org.
Yeah, circle.gnome.org. Applications and libraries extending the GNOME ecosystem. Now, is this...
So it's a way for developers to get into the GNOME ecosystem without having to be part of the core GNOME package collection.
Oh.
So I think it gives them more freedom and less restrictions as far as developing apps, but they can still get featured by the GNOME on the GNOME website.
That's an interesting, rather cool approach. And
so basically third-party apps that are endorsed by
Yeah.
GNOME. I think the extension manager is also somewhere in this group of not being official but still being endorsed by GNOME.
All right, cool. So announcements. Our next episode will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on May 1st. Get mintCast converted to your time zone. There will be a link in the show notes for that. Our next live stream will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on April 23rd, and there's a link to get that converted as well. Moving on to our wrap-up. Joe, how can we get a hold of you?
Well, if you like the sound of my voice, you can catch me at tllts.org. That's the Linux Link Text Show. Or the linuxlugcast.com. But I did miss Friday's show. I was busy doing campaign stuff. You can find me on MeWe. You can send me an email, jb@mintcast.org, or you can buy me a copy by using the link in the show notes. Boss?
You can hear me every week on the Full Circle Weekly News. I'm on Distro Hopper's Digest, which should be recording in a couple of weeks. You can email me at bardmoss@pm.me, and my contact info is available on itsmoss.com. Bill?
Well, for the time being, you can email me at bill@mintcast.org. I'm Bill_H on Discord, at WCHauser3 on Twitter, at WC Hauser 3 on Facebook also. And check out my new podcast, 3ftpodcast.org. How about you, Norbert?
I just muted while I wanted to unmute. You can send me an email at norbert@mintcast.org. And Nishant couldn't make it today, but you can send him an email at nishant@mintcast.org. His Raycon Ghost on Instagram, Raycon Ghost at GitHub, on GitHub, Ghost.Raycon on Discord, and Maverick00783 on Steam.
Before we leave,
I know that it's spelled Rycon, but he actually says it Recon.
Okay.
Before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. Josh Lowe for all his work on the website, Hobstar for our logo, Annette RD for the animated Discord logo, and Londoner for our time sync. Norbert and Tony Hughes for audio editing of the show, Bytemark Hosting for hosting mintcast.org, archive.org for hosting our audio files, and the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about every fortnight. Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
Thanks, Clem.
Clem.
Dun-dun-dun-dun.
All right, shut off the
So-
audacity. This is a short show.
Yeah.
Is it a record length short show?
I don't know about
Pretty
record,
close.
but an hour 44:54.
This is about the time frame it used to take, from 2 to 4, and then we kind of expanded to 2 to 5. But when we were doing from 2 to 4, that was, one show, and then we switched to 2 to 5, and it was 2 shows. So, pretty short.
Yeah, this is why we expanded it to 2 shows. Incidentally, I haven't seen a new episode for over a week. I know we've got some ready to go, but they haven't been going out.
Yes, I'm the culprit. I started listening to the first one that was due to have been uploaded, and at multiple places I've heard some of these popping noises that happens when some audio isn't well edited. I've been trying to get those out, so yeah, I fallen into the same trap. I can get it out tomorrow, and I can get the second part out on Wednesday. So I can make this up by releasing 4 episodes next week.
Okay.
Fortunately, okay. Yep.
I just want to see those coming out. We're not
Yep.
getting feedback for an obvious reason.
I think we should
And
put
I'm
up with
out of
a little bit of imperfection too, just to get some content out there.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
get it out. Let's see now. We have
Do we? Okay.
mintCast show audio. We don't have it. Let me see if I can make one.
I see your metal straw moss, and I raise my metal straw.
Ooh.
I'm not seeing right now. Folder. Come on. 385 audio.
You should have the ability now to make one.
I just did, and there it is.
There it is.
And
Okay. Music. Why in the world? Oh, FLAC. Crap.
yep, flat crap.
Oh, let's do it again. Export. Why did I? Because I know why. Because I export MP3s with.
Yeah,
You made a 385 folder?
I
Yeah,
did.
it's there. I'm in it right now.
I'm looking.
It's mintcast show dash audio
There we go, I
385
found it.
audio.
I don't know why I put it in the middle instead of, at the top or the bottom. That was annoying. I blame
I am.
Moss.
I'm annoying.
Damn it, Moss.
Moss's fault.
Remember the old Domino's commercial, avoid the Noid.
I guess I could stop the OBS.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for listening, watching, however you consume our show. whether it be
My
now or in the
upload's about
future.
2/3. Let me go look. Where's your straw, Norbert?
Yep. It's the